Hi, there's something I'd like to address today that is kind of very personal to my heart, and it always gets me a little concerned. Is during the holidays, a lot of people become very depressed for various reasons. They've lost somebody close to them. They have relationships that are not working out or not healthy at the time. They feel alone. I think a big one is some of the social media. People get on Facebook. They're always posting. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I have, and we have a tendency to compare our lives with everybody else's life, and really that's very unrealistic, because on Facebook, people are taking pictures. They're smiling. They're posting the highlights of their life, but nobody sees behind Facebook. They don't see the fight they had that day. They don't see the contention and the drama that's going on in their lives. I'll never forget, I really learned that lesson when I particularly knew of someone that was my age that had a whole web page, a whole website that if you didn't know her looking on, you would think she just had this fabulous life and she was just this wonderful mother. But knowing her personally, it wasn't the case at all. She had a lot of issues, a lot of drama, a lot of contention going on behind that web page, behind what she was putting up. And so sometimes we can get on social media and we can look at that and we can think, all the big smiles and all the great things that are being posted, and we look at our lives and we go, oh wow, I have so many things going on that are so depressing and everybody else seems so happy. And so I'd advise to just be careful, not to judge yourself and compare yourself, I should say, with other people. That's just not wise. But I wanted to talk about a subject that is very disconcerting to a lot of people, and that is the subject of suicide. Suicide is at an all-time high during the holidays. My son works for the paramedics, and I hear about how many attempts there are, and I also have a sister that is a nurse, and suicide is very, very on the rise. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I understand the power that is behind the thought of suicide, because I have had those thoughts, and probably many people have had those thoughts come to them, and I've had the strength of them. I've had it push me to the point of making plans when I have been in deep depression, to a scary point where I actually contacted a suicide hotline, because the power behind it was just so strong. And one of the things that's really hard for me is when I hear people say, oh, they just did that because they wanted attention, or most people do that because that's what they're wanting. They're just looking for attention. Well, what do I have to say but duh? That's like, saying the sky's raining because there's clouds. I mean, that's the obvious. If somebody is at a point where they're wanting to take their own life, there's usually a great need for some attention there. And maybe they don't want to go through with it. Maybe that's true. I honestly don't believe anybody truly just wants to kill themselves. But I do believe that pain gets to be too much for some people, and they truly talk themselves. And there is a really strong power behind the thought of suicide. And suicide comes from a place of just feeling like isolated, empty. What am I here for? What's the point of all this? It comes from a really, really, really painful place inside the soul. And when you have people in your life, I just wanted to talk to those of you that are out there that may have been thinking about suicide this season or recently, that those things are crossing their mind. And kind of try to encourage you to really consider that suicide is not the way out. We know from a religious perspective, people that are religious believe that suicide is a sure way to hell. I don't necessarily believe that, but it has a negative connotation with the religious people. I know with spiritual people, people that believe in reincarnation, that believe that the soul's on a journey, I have heard the thought process or the perception that when somebody commits suicide, they go back in utero immediately and have to go back into a similar situation because they have to learn the lessons that that life is providing for them, and they checked out on it, so they got to start over again. So that thought is kind of like, when I think about that, I think, oh man, I sure wouldn't want to have to go through some of the things I've been through in this life all over again. So I think about it that way. But the reality is nobody really knows exactly what is going to happen on the other side. People, have strong convictions and strong beliefs about it, but nobody truly really knows. It is a mystery. But I don't believe at all that suicide is the answer to life's problems. I don't believe that because you removed yourself from this physical house, that all those things that are hurting and bothering you now are going to magically disappear because you're not in that physical house anymore. One of the things that I want you to consider that may be going on, usually when you get to a place of wanting to destroy yourself, is because you've taken on beliefs about yourself that are not true. And it's from usually trying to connect in unhealthy relationships and with unhealthy people and people that are just dissociated from themselves. And maybe you try to talk to them. And my therapist did a little exercise for me, and I wanted to share it with you because I was talking to her about a frustration I was having with trying to communicate to some that I'm close to. And she did a little demonstration of how I was feeling, and I wanted to see if maybe you could relate to this too. You try to talk to somebody, and you're telling them you're having a hard time, and you're trying to open up and be vulnerable with them. You want to be heard, and they put up this, and they are saying, "Oh, here we go again. You and your drama, your screwed up childhood." These may be things that they may be taking everything you're trying to open up to and be and processing it through. This is what they're seeing. They're not seeing you. They're seeing this. Completely ignoring you. And trying to mirror that onto you, back onto you. People that come from religious environments that are trying to be heard and maybe aren't following the exact belief system of their parents, and their parents are really steeped in religion. A lot of time, or the people around them, it doesn't have to be parents, it could be anybody that's around them, that they're trying to open up and express who they are, and can make connections with loved ones, and the loved ones are really religious and you aren't, and suddenly you hear things such as, you are not right, you are flawed, and you need to be saved. And everything you try to share with them, open up with them, do with them, this is what they are filtering it through. They don't see you, they just see these statements. And those are like mirrors. And basically, it's going to be very important to learn how to turn those mirrors back on them. And say, that's not me, that's your mirror. That's not me. And that's very important to realize that it's their problem and their perception of life. And even if it's their perception of you, they're filtering it through their own belief systems. They're filtering it. That doesn't mean that's who you are. And it basically, I remember that one of the biggest breakthroughs I ever had in learning how to love myself was when I realized that somebody that was very abusive in my life just was not capable of loving me the way I needed to be loved. It had nothing to do with me being unlovable or flawed in any way. They weren't capable of it. And when I learned that, it really empowered me. So I want to just go over really quick, because I don't want this to be a long video, 5 things that you can do if you're suicidal at this point. Right now, for yourself, that doesn't necessarily involve anybody else. Because we don't want to have to be dependent on other people to rescue us when we get down, because they're not going to always be there. Sometimes people can be there, and that can be helpful, but they're not always going to be able to be there. And when they're not, we need to know how to, okay, I am suicidal. How can I stop this? And the first thing is to stop your thought process. Just whatever's going on in your head about suicide, just put the brakes on. and just say, I'm not going to go there anymore. And then step outside of it if you can. If at all possible, step outside and look at your thought process and recognize your all or nothing thinking in it. The things that are saying, this relationship is never going to get any better. Everybody is against me. Nobody loves me. The whole world is just going downhill. I mean, that's all or nothing thinking in a negative way. There is a balance. Challenge those thoughts. Like stop and say, okay, like if I was talking to myself, okay, Liz, is that true that nobody loves you? Nobody, stop and think about it. And then when I stop and think about it, I thought, okay, that's not true. Just because so and so and so, and maybe it's 10 people that I can count that are giving me a hard time, or I feel, contention in the relationship, doesn't mean that that's everybody. There's still billions of people in this world. So stop. Take captive, I guess, those thoughts. Take them captive, look at them objectively, and let them go. Okay? And then another thing that's very helpful is to turn on, I use YouTube. I don't have television, but you might have another source. But for me, I turn on YouTube. I will watch several videos, if necessarily, over and over and over again. Things that move me with compassion for somebody else. I'll watch, some of my favorites is to watch soldiers that are returning to their families after being out, and away from them for so long. I love those. And also I love animal rescue videos. Anything like that really moves you for compassion, because it's not to say that don't ever tell yourself, well, see, I feel so sorry for myself and they have that. Don't say that, because that's invalidating. But it's to help you not feel alone in your pain. It's to help. Sometimes I'll cry, but I'm crying for somebody else now, and I feel like, oh, wow, they have pain too. And it helps me. It just helps take the focus, I guess, away from the suicide and away from the thoughts that are just spiraling me down so deep that it's getting dangerous. And these are things to do when you feel like you're in the danger zone of, my suicidal thoughts are very powerful and I just can't even handle this right now. Number 3 is get out. Go out. Go to a bookstore. That's one thing I love to do. I go to a bookstore. I'll browse Barnes & Nobles. I'll just browse through books, look through books. Sometimes it's hard to engage at first, but after a while I'll start to engage in some of the books, and that takes my mind off of what I was so distressed about. Sometimes people say get out in nature and walk, and I think that can be good, but I think if it's not something you can engage your mind in at the same time, that can also just make you be in a place where you're still circulating all the thoughts. So you want to get out and do something that's going to engage your mind a little bit. So again, like a bookstore would be a good place to go. I don't know, maybe some of you have some other ideas. That's just a really, even shopping sometimes helps for me, because if, I might think about what I need, or what somebody else needs, or look for something specific, so it engages my mind more. Okay, and then do something to nurture yourself. Maybe you can go get, if you like to get your nails done, get your hair done, take yourself out to eat. If you're at home and you just want to curl up with a, go home and curl up with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and watch a good uplifting movie, or read a book, or just baby yourself as if you're sick. Think about a little child. If a little child was really distressed and came to you and was crying and was very depressed, what would you do for that little child? Think of yourself as that little child inside that's hurting. What would you do for them to say, hey, let's do something to cheer you up? Think about that for yourself. What can I do for myself to cheer me up, to help me feel better? And then the 5th thing I want to say is, if you can, exercise. Vigorous exercise is great. Yoga is great. Even if it's 5 minutes, it can make a difference. Just do some exercise. Do some jumping jacks. Get on YouTube and find some fun beginner Zumba classes, or wherever level you're at. I'm always a beginner. But do some exercise, because we all know that exercise raises your endorphins and can help take you out of that deep depressive state that you're in. And then finally, I just wanted to say that if you are having suicidal thoughts and you don't already have a therapist, and you're able to get one, I think it can be very beneficial. Therapists, when I first got a therapist, it sounded very intimidating to me. I was recommended to go and get one, and I had had a bad experience with one earlier on, and so, I just wasn't real keen on the idea. But I went ahead and I prayed about it. I asked God to help me to find somebody that I would, do well with. I found someone that specialized in childhood trauma, and I have been with her ever since. It took me a few months to to build up trust, probably a couple years to build complete trust. But the first few months, I would not even cry in front of her. I don't care how badly I felt like crying. I was just like, I'm not going to cry in front of this woman. So it takes time to develop a good relationship with a therapist. And I suggest if you get one that you go every week so that that relationship can be developed and that you can start having an hour time that's just for you. I know that sometimes there's free services that are offered in certain areas through colleges, and I don't know if people that don't have insurance or can't afford it. Ask questions, ask people, is there any resources? Look for somebody, even group therapy, free group therapy, if it'll get you out and get you to talk about with somebody else some of the things that are bothering you that you need to work through. Think of it as your time of taking care of yourself, and it's just for you, and it's just going to be about you and that hour time, that once a week hour time, or twice a week, however many times that you feel like you need to go. But do take care of yourself, and if you need to call somebody, if none of these things help and it's still bad and you feel like you're going to go through with it, call somebody, call 911. Don't take your life. It will get better. It might get bad again at times, but it does get better, and you'll be so glad that suicide's permanent. You can't just go, oh, I made a mistake, I wish I wouldn't have done that, I think I'll undo it. Once you're gone, you're gone. And so, really think about that, and know that your perspective in this world is valuable, and you're here on a journey. It's your life journey. You're learning things, you're growing. Nobody has the perspective that you have. You are valuable in this world, to somebody, to somewhere, maybe to somebody's. We all have a ripple effect in this life, and no matter how you're feeling right now, those are clouds, and they hurt and they're painful, but they will dissipate, and the sun will shine again, and you'll be so glad that you pressed through and you fought that battle through and you didn't give in. So anyways, I wanted to say happy holidays to you. I hope this has been helpful. Thinking about you, loving you, wishing you the very best. We'll talk to you later.